In the vast expanse of the Galactic Council chambers, first observer Zixtal struggled to maintain composure as he delivered his report. The massive holographic display behind him showed Earth, a seemingly unremarkable blue planet spinning quietly in space. But what made his three hearts race wasn't the planet itself, but rather what his research team had just uncovered about its inhabitants. "Distinguished council members," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "I believe we've made a grave error in our previous assessment of Earth." The gathered representatives of 200 advanced civilizations shifted uncomfortably in their seats. For centuries, they had classified Earth as a minimal threat world, largely due to its lack of planetary defense systems and unified military force. The humans had always puzzled them. Here was a species that spent more resources on entertainment and social media than on orbital defense platforms. Their space presence was minimal, just a handful of primitive satellites and space stations. No energy shields, no antimatter cannons, not even a proper early warning system. It seemed like they were practically inviting invasion. "We've been monitoring their global information networks, particularly something they call historical documents," Zixtal continued, pulling up footage of various human conflicts. "At first, we thought their apparent defenselessness was due to technological limitations or perhaps cultural pacifism. We were wrong, catastrophically wrong." The council chamber fell silent as images flashed across the screen. Humans fighting against overwhelming odds, adapting to impossible situations, and surviving scenarios that should have ended their species dozens of times over. "These creatures," Zixtal explained, "don't build planetary defenses because they don't need them. They are the defense system." He pulled up another set of data, this time showing human responses to various crisis scenarios. When faced with extinction-level threats, they don't retreat, they improvise. They don't surrender, they adapt. And most terrifyingly, they don't just survive, they come back stronger. The Council's chief strategist interrupted, her crystalline form pulsing with concern. "But surely their technological limitations are precisely what makes them so dangerous," Zixtal cut in. "We've discovered they have a saying, 'Necessity is the mother of invention.' When backed into a corner, humans don't just use the tools they have. They create new ones. They turn everyday objects into weapons. They transform peaceful technology into military advantages. And they do it faster than any species we've ever encountered." The display shifted to show various human innovations throughout history. They went from their first powered flight to landing on their moon in just 66 planetary rotations. They developed atomic power, for better or worse, in less than a decade when pressed. And now, he paused, letting the tension build. "Now?" prompted the council leader. "Now they're starting to look up at the stars more frequently. They're asking questions about their place in the universe. They're developing new technologies at an exponential rate. And most concerning of all, they're beginning to wonder why they haven't heard from anyone else yet." The chamber erupted in murmurs as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't defenseless. They were simply defending themselves in a way no other species had predicted. Their apparent vulnerability wasn't a weakness. It was a trap. A trap that had nearly worked on the Galactic Council itself. "I recommend," Zixtal concluded, "that we immediately reclassify Earth as a Class A restricted world, not for their protection, but for ours. Because if we make the mistake of viewing their lack of traditional defenses as weakness—" He let the thought hang in the air as he adjusted the hologram to show a human child playing with building blocks, only to knock them down and rebuild something entirely new. "We might just discover why they never needed those defenses in the first place." As the council chambers descended into chaos, Zixtal couldn't help but wonder, had humans somehow known they were being watched all along? The answer to that question would soon prove far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. The council's emergency session stretched into its third rotation as debates raged over how to handle the Earth situation. Some representatives advocated for immediate diplomatic contact, arguing that transparency was the safest approach. Others pushed for enhanced surveillance, convinced that humans must never discover they were being watched. But it was the data from Earth's most recent technological advances that truly sent shockwaves through the assembly. "You have to understand," Zixtal explained, bringing up new holographic displays. Humans don't think like us. When we develop technology, we follow logical progression paths. They make leaps, impossible leaps. The display showed a timeline of human innovation, with particular focus on the last decade. They went from theoretical quantum computing to practical applications in half the time our predictive models suggested, and their artificial intelligence research. He trailed off, knowing this would be the hardest part for the council to accept. The chief science officer leaned forward, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with intensity. Are you suggesting they've achieved true AI already? The question hung heavy in the air, making the chamber's atmospheric regulators work overtime to handle the collective anxiety of the assembled species. No, Zixtel replied, I'm suggesting something far more concerning. They're approaching it from angles we never considered. While we focused on replicating consciousness, they're creating specialized systems that work alongside human creativity. They're not trying to replace themselves. They're enhancing their natural abilities. New footage appeared, showing humans using primitive but effective augmented reality systems, neural interfaces, and collaborative AI tools. Look at how they approach problems, Zixtel continued. When faced with limitations, they don't just seek to overcome them. They rewrite the rules entirely. The Council's military advisor, a being composed primarily of contained plasma, pulsed with concern. But our technological superiority is based on principles they might not even consider valid. Zixtel interrupted. We've intercepted communications from their scientific community. They're already questioning fundamental aspects of physics we take for granted. They're exploring theories that our scientists dismissed centuries ago as impossible. The display shifted to show human children in what they called a playground, creating elaborate games with seemingly arbitrary rules that changed on the fly. This is how they think from the very beginning, Zixtel explained. They don't just adapt to their environment, they adapt their environment to themselves, and they do it instinctively. A junior observer rushed into the chamber, causing a stir among the normally proper council proceedings. She handed Zixtel a data crystal, her own color patterns showing signs of extreme distress. As he processed the new information, his expression darkened. We just detected something unusual, he announced, his voice barely steady. Several of Earth's leading research institutions have simultaneously begun investigating anomalies in their astronomical data. They're starting to notice patterns in what they believe to be natural phenomena. What kind of patterns? The council leader demanded. Our observation satellites. They're reverse engineering our cloaking technology by studying its effect on their star charts, not because they know we're here, but because their scientists simply refuse to ignore data that doesn't fit their current understanding of the universe. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just dealing with a species that could adapt to threats. They were facing one that could uncover advanced technology simply by noticing what shouldn't be there. And there's more, Zixtel added, his voice dropping to nearly a whisper. We've detected unusual activity at their polar research stations. The humans appear to have found something in their Arctic ice, something that predates their civilization, something that bears a striking resemblance to. Before he could finish, the chamber's emergency alerts began blaring. Earth's status indicators were changing rapidly, and no one in the council was prepared for what came next. The council's emergency alert systems continued blaring as the holographic displays erupted with new data streams. What the humans had discovered in the Arctic ice wasn't just a remnant of ancient technology. It was one of the Galactic Council's own long-lost observation posts, perfectly preserved for over 50,000 years. They've already begun studying it, Zixtel reported, his voice tight with barely contained panic. And in typical human fashion, they're not just examining the technology, they're improving upon it. The displays showed teams of researchers working in a hastily constructed facility, their primitive instruments somehow managing to decode systems that should have been far beyond their comprehension. The council leader rose from their seat, their crystalline form casting prismatic shadows across the chamber. How long until they activate it? The question wasn't if they would activate it, but when. Everyone present knew enough about humans to understand they wouldn't stop until they unlocked its secrets. That's not the real problem, Zixtal replied, bringing up new data. The problem is what they're doing with the information they've already extracted. The displays shifted to show various research facilities around Earth, all simultaneously working on projects that seemed unrelated at first glance. They're not trying to activate it at all. They're using it as a blueprint to build something entirely new. The military advisor's plasma form surged with agitation. Impossible. They can't possibly understand the principles behind. They don't need to. Zixtal cut in. They're not trying to understand how it works. They're looking at what it does and finding their own ways to achieve the same results. And they're doing it with materials and technologies they already have access to. The chamber's displays suddenly flickered as a new signal cut through their secure channels. Earth's primitive satellites were emanating an entirely new type of energy signature, one that bore a striking resemblance to the Council's own communication systems, but operating on principles that somehow made them more efficient. They've reverse engineered our quantum entanglement communications, the chief science officer whispered in disbelief. But they've modified it, made it better. The concept that humans could improve upon technology that had taken the Council millennia to perfect was almost too much to process. Zixtal's third heart nearly stopped as another alert demanded his attention. We're detecting massive energy signatures from their lunar facilities, he reported, his voice shaking. They're not just studying our technology. They're combining it with their own innovations. The energy readings are unlike anything in our databases. The council chambers descended into chaos as representatives argued about how to proceed. Some called for immediate intervention, others for full retreat from the Earth sector. But before any decision could be reached, every display in the chamber suddenly went dark. Then, one by one, they reactivated, showing a single message that made even the most seasoned council members tremble. We know you're watching. We've always known. And we need to talk. The message wasn't sent using the council's communication systems, or even the hybrid technology humans had just developed. It came through channels that shouldn't exist, using principles that defied the council's understanding of physics itself. Zixtal watched in stunned silence as new data poured in, revealing the true scope of what humanity had accomplished while appearing defenseless. They hadn't just discovered the council's presence. They had been preparing for this moment for generations, hiding their true capabilities behind a carefully constructed facade of technological simplicity. As the council struggled to process this revelation, a new transmission began. What it contained would forever change the balance of power in the galaxy, and finally reveal why humans had never needed traditional planetary defenses. The greatest deception in galactic history was about to be exposed, and no one, not even Zixtal, was prepared for the truth. The new transmission wasn't just a message. It was a complete database of human history, but not the history the Council had been studying. This was the real history, carefully hidden beneath layers of fabricated technological development and false cultural indicators. As the data streamed through the Council's systems, Zixtal felt his understanding of reality fundamentally shift. They didn't just find our observation post, he announced to the stunned chamber. They built it, 50,000 years ago. The holographic displays showed images that seemed impossible. Ancient human civilizations far more advanced than their current society appeared to be. They didn't discover our technology. They're the ones who invented most of it in the first place. The council leader's crystalline form vibrated with disbelief. But their current technological level, their primitive space programs, their limited defensive capabilities, all part of a massive, species-wide deception, Zixtal explained, his voice filled with awe. They deliberately regressed their technology, erased their true history, and started over. The question isn't why they appear defenseless, it's why they chose to hide their true capabilities for so long. New data continued pouring in, showing evidence of ancient human colonies across hundreds of worlds, most of which the Council had classified as naturally occurring ruins. The humans hadn't just explored space before. They had once been one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. But why? The military advisor demanded, their plasma form fluctuating wildly. Why would an advanced species choose to become primitive? Before Zixtal could respond, every screen in the chamber shifted to show a live transmission. The figure that appeared was clearly human, but there was something about their eyes that spoke of knowledge far beyond their apparent years. Because we learned something, the human said, speaking in perfect galactic standard. Something that made us realize that advanced technology wasn't the answer to survival. It was the threat. The chamber fell silent as the human continued. 50,000 years ago, we encountered something out there in the dark between galaxies. Something that hunts civilizations that reach a certain level of technological advancement. Something that's still out there, getting closer. Zixtel felt his heart stop as the implications became clear. The humans hadn't been hiding from the Council. They had been hiding from something else. Their apparent technological regression wasn't a retreat. It was a strategic camouflage on a species-wide scale. We didn't abandon our technology. The human explained, we transformed it. Instead of building defenses that could be detected and overcome, we turned our entire species into a hidden weapon. Every human child's creativity, every seemingly random innovation, every primitive solution to an advanced problem. It's all part of our defense system. The displays showed new data, revealing how humans had encoded their advanced knowledge into their very DNA, allowing them to rediscover technologies rapidly when needed, but in new and unpredictable ways that no external force could anticipate or counter. We needed to warn you, the human continued, because they're coming. The hunters we discovered, and your civilization's technological signatures are drawing them straight to this sector of space. The council chambers erupted in panic, but Zixtel noticed something else in the data streams, something that suggested this wasn't the end of the revelations. The humans weren't just warning them. They were implementing the next phase of a plan 50,000 years in the making. And as new energy signatures began appearing around Earth, unlike anything ever recorded in the Council's history, it became clear that humanity's greatest deception wasn't pretending to be defenseless. It was making everyone else think they knew what a proper defense looked like in the first place. The energy signatures surrounding Earth weren't weapons or shields. They were gateways. Massive portals began opening in precise formations, revealing thousands of seemingly primitive human colonies scattered across multiple galaxies. Each one had evolved differently, developed unique technologies, and prepared for this moment in its own unpredictable way. We didn't just hide, the human representative explained, their calm voice a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding in the council chamber. We diversified. Every human colony was isolated, allowed to develop independently, finding unique solutions to universal problems. When the hunters adapt to one form of defense, they'll face thousands of others they've never encountered. The displays showed these colonies in action. Some had developed biological technologies that merged seamlessly with their environments. Others had mastered energy manipulation through art and music, and still others had transformed their entire societies into living quantum computers. Each colony represented a completely different path of human evolution and technological development. Your civilization's greatest weakness, the human continued, is that you all follow the same logical progression of technological advancement. The hunters learned to predict and counter this pattern eons ago, but humans, they smiled, were anything but logical. Zixtel watched in amazement as the colonies began connecting through the portals, sharing their innovations in real time. But instead of combining their technologies, they were doing something unprecedented. They were deliberately scrambling them, creating hybrid systems that defied any attempt at classification or prediction. This is why we appeared defenseless, the human explained. Traditional defenses can be studied, understood, and overcome. But how do you counter a species that turns music into quantum shields? Or one that powers starships through interpretive dance? Or colonies that have transformed their entire cultures into living weapons simply by changing how they think about reality itself? The Council's sensors were overwhelmed as the human colonies demonstrated their capabilities. One group had developed technology based entirely on telling stories, another had evolved to manipulate probability itself, and a third had somehow weaponized kindness in ways that the Council's best scientists couldn't begin to comprehend. But the true revelation came when the human revealed their final secret. The hunters aren't coming, they said, their expression shifting to something between pride and amusement. They've been here all along. We didn't just hide from them. We've been systematically hunting the hunters for 50,000 years. The displays showed the truth. Every seemingly random human innovation, every peculiar cultural practice, every inexplicable technological breakthrough had been carefully designed to trap and eliminate the very forces that had once threatened them. The hunters had been so focused on looking for advanced civilizations that they never noticed they were being surrounded by ones that appeared primitive. Today's transmission wasn't a warning. The human said it was a courtesy notice. We finally cornered the last of them, and we wanted to explain why what happens next might seem a little unusual. As if on cue, humans across every colony began doing something so seemingly random, so apparently meaningless, that even Zixtol's advanced analytical systems couldn't process it. But in that chaos, in that deliberate embrace of the unpredictable, something impossible happened. Reality itself seemed to hiccup, and in that moment, the hunters, beings that had terrorized advanced civilizations for millions of years, simply ceased to exist, not through violence or advanced technology, but through an act so fundamentally human that no other species would have ever considered it a weapon. We didn't build defenses, the human concluded with a gentle smile. We became them. And now we'd like to teach you how to do the same. That is, if you're willing to learn how to think a little differently. The council chambers fell silent as representatives of 200 of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy faced a humbling truth. They hadn't discovered humanity. Humanity had been protecting them all along. And somewhere on Earth, a child played with blocks, unknowingly rearranging the fundamental forces of the universe, while the galaxy's most dangerous predators never saw it coming. In the days that followed, the Galactic Council underwent its most significant transformation in recorded history. The human colonies began sharing not their technologies, but their methodologies, teaching other species how to break free from conventional thinking and embrace the power of unpredictability. The council chambers, once a place of rigid protocol and logical debate, now hosted what humans called playground sessions. Representatives from advanced civilizations found themselves building sandcastles, playing hide and seek, and engaging in activities that seemed meaningless but were secretly rewiring their understanding of the universe. The key was never the technology, explained the human representative, watching as a group of crystalline beings attempted to learn hopscotch. It was learning to see beyond what we think is possible. Every game a child invents, every story we tell, every silly dance or song, they're all ways of reshaping reality. We just needed to remember how to play. Zixtol, who had been nominated to lead the first interspecies training program, found himself struggling with a simple human concept called imagination. But as he watched a young human child explain why their stuffed animal could bend time, something finally clicked. The power wasn't in the explanation. It was in the willingness to consider that maybe, just maybe, the stuffed animal really could. The human colonies began integrating with other civilizations, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of establishing formal diplomatic relations, they organized galaxy-wide art festivals, sports tournaments, and cooking competitions. These weren't just cultural exchanges. They were subtle lessons in how to transcend the limitations of logical thought. Remember, the human representative told the council during their final formal session, the greatest defense isn't a shield you can see or a weapon you can hold. It's the ability to become something your opponent can't even imagine existing. As the various species began developing their own unique approaches to reality, strange and wonderful things started happening across the galaxy. A civilization of gas beings discovered they could communicate through interpretive cloud formations. A species of silicon-based life forms learned to process information through improvised dance. Even the most technologically advanced races found themselves rediscovering the power of simple, childlike wonder. The human colonies maintained their apparent primitive status, continuing their role as the galaxy's hidden guardians. But now they had partners in their mission. Civilizations that understood that true power lay not in logical progression, but in the beautiful chaos of creativity. Back on Earth in a small playground, a child looked up at the stars and waved. Around her neck hung a simple necklace, a gift from a crystalline being who had learned to express emotion through color. In her pocket was a drawing she planned to show her parents. a design for a spaceship powered by laughter that, unknown to anyone, would actually work perfectly. Zixtal, watching from his newly established Earth observation post, now openly welcomed by humans, finally understood the greatest lesson of all. The humans hadn't just outsmarted the hunters or the council. They had discovered that the true path to universal peace wasn't through superior firepower or advanced technology. It was through teaching others to embrace the beautiful uncertainty of endless possibility. As the sun set on another Earth day, millions of children across the galaxy played games whose rules made no sense, sang songs that accidentally altered quantum states, and dreamed up impossibilities that would soon become reality. And in doing so, they created the strongest defense system the universe had ever known, one built not on fear or power, but on the simple, unshakable human belief that anything is possible if you're willing to imagine it. The galaxy was never the same after that, and somewhere, in the vast expanse of space, a stuffed animal really did bend time, just because a child believed it could.